Raise your glass to the daughter who finally found someone desperate enough to marry her. My father said it into a microphone at my wedding, in front of 187 guests, and the room loved it, because to them, I wasn't a bride. I was entertainment. His business partners, his golf friends, distant relatives I'd never met, but who somehow had front row seats to my humiliation. People laughed like it was the line of the night. But my fiancé didn't. He stood up so calmly, it scared me more than if he'd shouted. He walked to the projector meant for our engagement photos and slid in a USB drive he'd been carrying in his vest pocket for 8 months. "Let's talk about what you did instead," he said. What happened next made my father's biggest business partner walk out. My mother filed for separation that same night, and my brother apologized to me for the first time in 33 years. I'm Elena, 29 years old, and this is the story of the wedding my husband spent 8 months preparing for, not for the ceremony, but for that exact moment. If you're watching this, please like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from right now. To understand what happened at that wedding, you need to understand the foster family hire in $8.7 million a year. He's got a net worth of around $4.2 million, and he never lets anyone fauci. My father, Richard Foster, owns Foster Motors, a car dealership in Sacramento that pulls or get it. Self-made man, he calls himself. Though I found out years later that my maternal grandfather gave him the startup loan, he conveniently never mentions. In the Foster household, there are 2 types of children, the heir and the afterthought. My brother Derek is the heir, 4 years older, groomed from birth to take over the dealership. Private school education, $68,000 a year, paid in full by dad, business degree from a mid-tier university, graduated with a C average, and still got a corner office at Foster Motors before his diploma was framed. Then there's me, the daughter, the one who is expected to marry well and stop asking questions. I graduated summa cum laude from UC Berkeley, top of my class, dean's list every semester. My father didn't come to my graduation. He said he had an important meeting. I found out later through a Facebook post. My aunt accidentally liked that he was playing golf at his country club that same afternoon. When Derek graduated with his C average, Dad threw a party, hired a band, invited 50 people, gave a speech about the future of Foster Motors. When I graduated with honors from one of the best public universities in the country, I got a text message. Congrats. Don't forget to send thank you cards to your relatives. That was the first sign I should have paid attention to. The second sign came with a price tag of $47,000. 487. That's how much I pay every month for my student loans. Have been paying since I was 22. Will keep paying until I'm 32, if I'm lucky, and nothing goes wrong. $52,000 in total debt for a degree my family could have easily afforded. Here's what never made sense to me. My grandparents, my mother's parents, passed away in 2012, the year before I started college. They weren't wealthy, but they were careful. They saved. And according to my Aunt Helen, my mother's younger sister, they left me $47,000, specifically for my education. Your grandparents wanted to make sure you could go to any school you wanted. Aunt Helen told me once when I was 19 and drowning in loan applications. They set up a fund just for you. When I asked my father about it, he barely looked up from his newspaper. That money wasn't enough, he said. I had to use it for other family expenses. You understand? I didn't understand. But I was 18 and I'd been trained my whole life not to question him. So I nodded, signed the loan papers, and spent the next decade wondering why I was the only foster child who had to pay for her own education. I never saw the will. I never asked for documentation. I never pushed. Because in the foster family, you don't question Richard. You don't ask for receipts. You accept what he tells you, and you're grateful for it. It wasn't until 8 years later, 3 months before my wedding, that I finally learned the truth about where that $47,000 actually went. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The money was one thing, the words were another. My father had a way of cutting you down so casually that you almost didn't notice you were bleeding. He'd say things at family dinners, at holidays, in front of guests, things that sounded like jokes but felt like knives. Elena is still doing something in San Francisco. We're not really sure what. I'm a senior financial analyst. I manage a portfolio worth $14 million. I make $127,000 a year, and I've been rated exceeds expectations for 3 consecutive years. But to my father, I was always doing something. Why can't you be more like your brother, Derek, who still lives in the house that bought him? Derek, who's never had to make a car payment or worry about health insurance. Derek, who got a promotion to vice president of operations at Foster Motors, despite having no operations experience whatsoever. Good thing you're pretty. Someone might marry you. He said that at Thanksgiving 2023 in front of his business partners. Everyone laughed. I excused myself to the bathroom and cried for 10 minutes, then came back and smiled through dessert. That was my life. Smile through the pain. Don't make waves. Don't embarrass the family. Then I met Marcus, January 2024, a mutual friend's birthday party in the city. He was tall, calm, and he listened. Really listened when I talked. 3 dates in, I realized I'd never had someone ask me so many questions about my life without trying to one-up me or change the subject. 4 months later, he came to his first foster family dinner, and for the first time, someone asked me the question I'd been avoiding for 29 years. April 2024. My parents' house in Sacramento. The dining room with the mahogany table my father loves to brag cost $12,000. Marcus sat next to me, polite and composed, while my father held court at the head of the table. The usual performance stories about the dealership, humble brags about his latest golf score, pointed comments about Derek's bright future. Then Dad turned to Marcus. So, you're the new boyfriend. He didn't phrase it as a question. Hope you're not planning to run off like the last few. Elena has a habit of scaring men away. I felt my face flush. Dad, I'm just saying, he shrugged, cutting his steak. You've got to wonder what's wrong with a girl when she can't keep a man past 6 months. Marcus said nothing. He finished his meal, complimented my mother's cooking, and shook my father's hand on the way out. But in the car, 15 minutes into the drive back to the city, he pulled over to the side of the road and turned to me. Does your father always talk to you like that? I opened my mouth to defend him, to explain, to minimize. Instead, I burst into tears. 40 minutes. That's how long I cried in that car, parked on the shoulder of I-80, while Marcus held my hand and didn't say a word. When I finally stopped, he asked me one more question. Do you know that what he says to you isn't normal? I didn't have an answer. But that night, after he dropped me off, Marcus started keeping notes, dates, quotes, witnesses. He didn't tell me. He just started building a file. I wouldn't find out about it until 4 months later. Marcus proposed in May 2024. A quiet evening at our favorite restaurant in Salelo, overlooking the bay. No flash mob, no skywriting, no viral video, just him, me, and a simple question. I said yes before he finished asking. The next morning, I called my parents to share the news. My mother cried happy tears. My father had a different reaction. I'll handle the wedding, he announced. I'll take care of everything. Consider it my gift. It sounded generous. It wasn't. I wanted a small ceremony. 50 people, maybe 60. Close friends, immediate family, the people who actually knew us. My father booked Rosewood Estate in Napa Valley. $45,000 for the venue alone. He invited 187 guests, and when I looked at the list, I realized I only recognized about 40 names. The rest were his business associates, his golf buddies, his clients, people he wanted to impress. This is my daughter's wedding, he told anyone who would listen. I'm sparing no expense. Every time I try to make a decision, the menu, the music, the seating chart, he overruled me. I'm paying $45,000 for this venue. I think I get a say. He said that exact sentence at least a dozen times over the next 3 months. $45,000. As if that number gave him ownership over my wedding day. Over me. I wanted to push back. I wanted to say no. But 29 years of conditioning had taught me that fighting Richard Foster wasn't worth the cost. So I let him plan my wedding. I let him invite his people. I let him control everything. I didn't know that Marcus was planning something else entirely. June 2024, 3 months before the wedding, my Aunt Helen called Marcus with a favor. She was selling my grandparents' old house, the one they'd left her in the will, and needed help with some of the legal paperwork. Marcus specialized in family law and estate matters, so she figured he could point her in the right direction. He agreed to look over the documents. That's when he found it. Buried in a folder of old bank statements and tax records, there was a statement from August 2013, an account in my name, the education fund my grandparents had set up before they died. $47,000 withdrawn in full on August 15, 2013, transferred to a personal checking account belonging to Richard M. Foster. Marcus called Aunt Helen immediately. Did you know about this? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I always wondered why Elena had to take out loans. Your grandparents left her enough to cover everything. Why didn't you say anything? Richard told me to stay out of it. He said it was family business and I should mind my own. Her voice tightened. I was afraid of him. We all were. Marcus made a copy of the bank statement. Then he made another copy and locked it in his office safe. He didn't tell me. Not yet. He said later that he wanted to be sure, wanted to have more than just one piece of paper before he brought it to me. But that night, he started digging deeper into my father's finances, into his business dealings, into the secrets Richard Foster had been hiding for years. He found more than he expected. July 2, 2024, 2 months before the wedding, I found my dress at a boutique in San Francisco. Ivory silk, delicate lace sleeves, a fitted bodice that made me feel for the first time in my life like someone worth looking at. The price tag read, $3,200. I called my mother to share the news, excited and nervous. The next day, my father called me. $3,000 for a dress you'll wear once. His voice was sharp. Are you out of your mind? I'm paying for it myself, Dad. With what money? Your little job in San Francisco? My little job pays $127,000 a year. He laughed. Actually laughed. Sure it does. Listen, I'll find you something for $800. You don't need to waste money on I'm buying this dress. Silence. 3 seconds. 4. Fine. Waste your money, but don't come crying to me when you can't pay your rent. He hung up. I stood there in my apartment shaking, wondering why I still let him get to me after all these years. 2 days later, I got a package at my door. Inside was a check for $3,200 and a note in elegant handwriting for the bride. Every woman deserves to feel beautiful on her wedding day. Margaret Webb, Marcus's mother. She'd heard about the phone call. Marcus must have told her. And she'd quietly, without any fanfare, bought me my wedding dress. I cried for 20 minutes. Not because of the money, because it was the first time someone in a parental role had given me something without making me feel like I owed them for it. The same month, Marcus found the bank statements. He found something else. He'd been researching my father's business dealings, looking for patterns, inconsistencies, anything that might explain where $47,000 had really gone. What he found instead was a name, Vanessa Cole. She had worked as an accountant at Foster Motors from 2013 to 2018. She had divorced her husband in 2019 after 12 years of marriage. And according to the court records Marcus pulled, the reason for the divorce was listed as infidelity spouse's affair with employer. Marcus reached out to her through a mutual professional contact. He explained who he was, who I was, and why he was asking questions. She agreed to meet him at a coffee shop in Folsom. 6 years, she told him, stirring her latte with a trembling hand. 6 years he promised he'd leave his wife. 6 years I believed him. She showed Marcus her phone, screenshots of text messages she'd saved, dated from 2014 to 2019. Meet me at the hotel tonight. Richard, March 2015. I'll leave her soon. Just wait for me. Richard, November 2016. I love you, not her. Richard, June 2018. I lost my marriage because of him. Vanessa said 12 years, 2 kids gone, and he just moved on like I was nothing. Marcus asked if she'd be willing to let him use the screenshots. For what? To make sure he can't hurt anyone else the way he hurt you. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. I've been waiting 5 years for someone to believe me. Use whatever you need. Marcus drove home that night with a folder full of evidence and a plan forming in his mind. August 2024, 1 month before the wedding, Marcus sat me down at our kitchen table on a Tuesday evening. He had a folder in his hands, manila unmarked, thick with papers. There's something I need to show you, he said. And I need you to know that whatever you decide to do with this information, I'll support you. He opened the folder. The first document was a bank statement. August 15th, 2013. $47,000 withdrawn from an account in my name and transferred to Richard M. Foster's personal checking account. I stared at it for a full minute before I could speak. This is my college fund. Yes. He took it. Yes. The second set of documents were screenshots, text messages between my father and a woman whose face was blurred out, love notes, promises, plans to meet at hotels, dated across 6 years while he was still married to my mother, still lecturing me about family values, still making me feel like I was the disappointment. I read every single one. When I finished, I set the papers down and looked at Marcus. How long have you known? 2 months. I wanted to be sure before I told you. And what do you want me to do with this? He took my hand. That's your choice. We can confront him privately. We can tell your mother. We can do nothing at all. But I thought you deserved to know the truth. I sat there for a long time holding the evidence of 29 years of lies. I don't know what I want to do, I finally said. But I know I don't want to. Stay silent anymore. That was my point of no return. The plan came together over the next 2 weeks. Marcus laid it out one evening while we sat on our balcony, watching the fog roll in over the bay. Your father is going to do something at the wedding. He said he won't be able to help himself. He needs an audience, and this is the biggest audience he'll ever have. I knew he was right. My father had never missed an opportunity to be the center of attention, especially when he could make himself look good at someone else's expense. So, we wait, Marcus continued. If he behaves himself, we have a normal wedding, and we deal with this privately later. But if he does what I think he's going to do, he pulled out a USB drive from his pocket. What's on that? Everything. The bank statements redacted to protect irrelevant information. The text messages with Vanessa's face blurred per her request. A recorded statement from your Aunt Helen confirming what she knows about the educational fund. How long is it? 4 minutes and 22 seconds. I stared at the tiny piece of plastic in his hand. 4 minutes and 22 seconds of truth. 29 years of lies compressed into a video file smaller than my thumb. What if he doesn't do anything? I asked. Then this stays in my pocket and we figure out another way. And if he does? Marcus looked at me steadily. Then we show everyone exactly who Richard Foster really is. I thought about it for 3 days. I thought about my mother who would see those messages. I thought about Derek, who idolized our father. I thought about the guests, the business partners, the carefully constructed image my father had spent decades building. Then I thought about $47,000 and a lifetime of being told I wasn't enough. Okay, I said. We're ready. 1 week before the wedding, Marcus made 2 phone calls. The first was to Vanessa Cole. I need to confirm one last time, he said. Are you certain you want us to use the screenshots? Her answer came without hesitation. I've spent 5 years watching him walk around Sacramento like he's some kind of saint. Meanwhile, I lost my husband. My kids only see me every other weekend, and nobody believed me when I tried to tell them what happened. She paused. So, yes, use them. Show everyone who he really is. The second call was to my Aunt Helen. If this comes out publicly, Marcus warned her, Richard will know you helped us. Are you prepared for that? I've been afraid of that man for 15 years, Aunt Helen said. He threatened me when I asked about Elena's college fund. Told me I'd regret it if I didn't keep my mouth shut. Her voice hardened. I'm done being afraid. That evening, I called them both. I'd never met Vanessa before, but I thanked her for her courage, for her willingness to relive something painful so that I could finally know the truth. Your father took something from both of us, she said. At least now we can take something back. Aunt Helen was easier. She'd always loved me. Always tried to protect me in small ways when my father wasn't looking. Your grandparents would be so proud of you, she told me. They always knew you were special. I hung up the phone and sat in the quiet of my apartment, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in my life, I had people willing to stand with me against the man who had spent decades making me feel worthless. The wedding was in 7 days, Saturday, September 14th, 2024. I woke up at 6:00 in the morning in a suite at Rosewood Estate, Napa Valley. The sun was just starting to rise over the vineyards, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. In my overnight bag, tucked beneath my makeup kit, was a folder containing copies of every piece of evidence Marcus had gathered, just in case. The USB drive was in Marcus' vest pocket. It had been there since we'd arrived the night before. My mother came to help me get ready at 8. She'd aged in the past few months, more gray in her hair, more lines around her eyes, but she smiled when she saw me in my dress. You look beautiful, she said, adjusting my veil. Absolutely beautiful. It was the first time she had said those words to me without my father in the room to contradict her. Outside, I could hear the sounds of setup, chairs being arranged, flowers being placed. My father's voice loud and commanding, directing the staff like he was running a military operation. Make sure the projector's working for the slideshow, I heard him say. I want everything perfect. The projector, the one Marcus had requested for our engagement photos, the one my father had approved without a second thought, because it gave him another opportunity to show off. By noon, guests had started arriving. I watched from my window as cars pulled up the long driveway, business suits and summer dresses. People I knew, people I didn't. 187 guests, 40 that I recognized. The rest were here for Richard Foster's show. They just didn't know yet that the show was about to change. 5. The ceremony began. I stood at the entrance of the garden, my arm linked through my father's, waiting for the music to start. He was wearing a custom suit, $3,000 he'd mentioned at least 4 times that morning, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Don't embarrass me, he murmured as the first notes of the processional began. I didn't respond. I just started walking. The aisle stretched before me, lined with white roses and flickering candles. 187 faces turned to watch, but I only saw one. Marcus stood at the altar, calm and steady, his eyes never leaving mine. He was wearing a navy suit with a subtle pattern, and when I got close enough to see his face clearly, I noticed his hand drift briefly to his vest pocket. The USB drive was still there. The ceremony itself was everything a wedding should be. Vows exchanged, rings placed, promises made. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Marcus pulled me close and whispered in my ear, "Whatever happens next, I love you." I kissed him back, and for one perfect moment, I let myself believe that everything would be fine. The guests applauded. My mother dabbed at her eyes. Even Derek, standing stiffly in his groomsman's suit, managed a genuine smile. My father clapped the loudest, already positioning himself near the microphone that had been set up for their reception toasts. As we walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, I felt Marcus's hand tighten around mine. "He's going to do it," Marcus said quietly. "I can tell." I looked at my father's face, the eager anticipation, the barely concealed excitement. And I knew Marcus was right. The ceremony was over. The real event was about to begin. 7:30. The reception was in full swing. Dinner had been served. Filet mignon and salmon. My father's choices, not mine, and the champagne was flowing freely. The band played soft jazz while guests mingled between tables. And everywhere I looked, I saw my father working the room. Handshakes, backslaps, loud laughter at his own jokes. Then he picked up the microphone. No one had asked him to speak. No one had introduced him. He simply walked to the front of the room, tapped the mic twice, and waited for silence. "I'd like to say a few words about my daughter." My stomach dropped. Elena has always been a challenge. He paused for effect, letting the word hang in the air. Not as smart as her brother, not as driven. We always wondered what would become of her. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. I felt Marcus's hand close around mine under the table. "But today," my father continued, his smile widening, "today I'm proud to announce that she's finally done something right." He raised his champagne glass. "So, let's raise our glasses to the daughter who finally found someone desperate enough to marry her." The room erupted in laughter. Not everyone. I could see my Aunt Helen's horrified face, my mother's frozen smile. But enough. My father's business partners, his girlfriends, the people who had come to this wedding to curry favor with Richard Foster. They laughed. I sat there in my $3,000 dress in front of 187 people, while my father called my husband desperate, and my entire existence a joke. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, but Marcus could. He stood up. Marcus didn't yell. He didn't slam his fist on the table or make a scene. He simply rose from his chair, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the projector set up at the side of the room. My father watched him with an amused expression. "Oh, the groom wants to respond." He chuckled into the microphone. "By all means, go ahead. This should be good." Marcus didn't take the bait. He pulled the USB drive from his vest pocket, the same pocket he touched during our ceremony, and plugged it into the laptop connected to the projector. "Thank you, Richard," he said, his voice calm and clear. "I do want to say a few words." The screen behind him flickered to life. But instead of talking about how desperate I am to marry your daughter, he paused, letting the word hang in the air the same way my father had. "I think we should talk about what you've done." My father's smile faltered. "What are you, please?" Marcus held up a hand. "Let me finish. You've had your turn." He clicked a button on the laptop. The first slide appeared. A scanned bank statement dated August 15th, 2013. An account in my name. A withdrawal of $47,000. a transfer to an account belonging to Richard M. Foster. The room went silent. "This," Marcus said, "is the college fund that Elena's grandparents left for her education. The money that was supposed to pay for her degree." He clicked again. "And this is where it went instead." My father's face had gone pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. For the first time in my life, Richard Foster was speechless, and Marcus was just getting started. I need to pause here for a moment. If you're watching this and you've ever been humiliated by someone in your own family in front of people who should have defended you, I want you to know that I understand that feeling of being frozen, unable to speak, unable to fight back. I know it too well. You're not alone. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And if you want to know what happened next, what was on the rest of that video, hit that subscribe button and like this video. We're just getting to the good part. Let's continue. The screen displayed the bank statement in crisp detail. Account number partially redacted, but the name was clear. Elena Foster Education Fund. The amount, $47,000. The destination, Richard M. Foster. Personal checking. Marcus let it sit there for 10 seconds while the room processed what they were seeing. Then Aunt Helen's voice filled the room, a recording clear and steady. "My parents left $47,000 for Elena's college education. Richard told her the money was gone, that it wasn't enough, but I found the records. He transferred every penny into his own account." My father lunged toward the laptop. "Turn that off. This is slander. It's a bank statement, Richard." Marcus didn't move. "Bank statements aren't slander. They're facts. I'll sue you." "You'll what?" "Sue me for showing people a document with your name on it." The whispers had started. I could hear them rippling through the crowd like wind through dry leaves. People pulling out phones. People leaning toward each other with wide eyes. Thomas Brennan, my father's biggest business partner, a man who'd been coming to our house for Christmas dinner for 15 years, was staring at the screen with his jaw clenched. That money, Marcos continued, was supposed to pay for Elena's education. Instead, she spent the last decade paying off $52,000 in student loans, $487 a month, while her father drove a Mercedes and took golf trips to Scottsdale. My father's face had gone from pale to red. "This is a private family matter. You made it public when you picked up that microphone." Marcus clicked to the next slide, but we're not done yet. The next slide was a series of text messages. The sender's name was visible, Richard Foster. The recipient's information was blurred, but the content was unmistakable. "Meet me at the hotel tonight, March 2015. I'll leave here soon. Just wait for me." November 2016. "I love you, not her." June 2018. The gasps were audible now. Someone dropped a champagne glass. It shattered against the floor, but no one moved to clean it up. Marcus's voice remained steady. These messages span 6 years. From 2014 to 2019, the one in these conversations has confirmed their authenticity and has provided a sworn statement. He clicked again. More messages appeared. More promises, more lies. "I can't live without you. She means nothing to me. Just a little longer. I'll leave her." I looked at my mother. She was standing now, one hand pressed against her mouth, the other gripping the back of her chair. 32 years of marriage. 32 years of believing she knew the man she had built a life with. And now she was watching that belief crumble in front of nearly 200 people. "This is fabricated," my father's voice cracked. "I'll have you arrested for what?" Marcus cut him off. "Showing text messages that you sent, messages with timestamps and phone records that can't be verified." The final slide appeared, a simple statement. "All documents have been notarized and copies are held by legal counsel." My father stood frozen, the microphone still in his hand, his empire of lies collapsing around him in real time. My mother turned and walked toward me. She didn't look at him. She looked at me. The silence lasted exactly 10 seconds. Then Thomas Brennan stood up. He was a large man, imposing, the kind of presence that commanded attention without trying. He'd been my father's business partner for 15 years. Their handshake deal on auto parts distribution was worth $340,000 annually to Foster Motors. He didn't say a word. He simply nodded once at Marcus, took his wife's hand, and walked out of the reception hall. The doors hadn't even closed behind him before 3 other couples followed. I watched as the room began to fracture. Some guests sat frozen, unsure what to do. Others pulled out their phones, already typing. A few made their way toward my father, but their expressions weren't sympathetic. They were calculating, reassessing, distancing. My brother Derek sat at the head table, his face strained of color. He hadn't moved since the first slide appeared. I'd spent my whole life watching him receive everything I was denied. And now he was watching our father's carefully constructed world fall apart. He didn't defend that. He didn't say anything at all. My mother reached me and wrapped her arms around my shoulders. She was trembling. 32 years, she whispered. 32 years I trusted him. I held her while she cried, right there in the middle of my wedding reception, surrounded by the wreckage of my father's reputation. When I finally looked up, I counted the empty seats. 8 people had left with Thomas Brennan. More were gathering their things. The laughter from 10 minutes ago had been replaced by the shuffle of feet and the murmur of shocked voices. My father stood alone at the front of the room, still holding the microphone with no one left to perform for. Marcus walked over to my father and held out his hand. For a moment, I thought he was offering a handshake, some kind of the twisted olive branch, but then I realized he was reaching for the microphone. My father handed it over without resistance. He looked like a man who'd just been told his house was on fire and couldn't find the exit. Marcus turned to face the room. "I want to be clear about something," he said, his voice carrying easily in the stunned silence. "I'm not desperate. I'm not settling. I'm the luckiest person in this room." He looked at me, and despite everything, the chaos, the tears, the shattered illusions, I felt something warm spread through my chest. Elena is brilliant. She's kind. She's stronger than anyone I've ever met. He turned back to the crowd, and she's spent 29 years being told she wasn't good enough by a man who stole from her and lied to everyone who trusted him. Then he addressed my father directly. "You had 29 years to be her father. You used that time to take her money and break her down. Today is the last day you get to humiliate her." My father opened his mouth, but Marcus wasn't finished. To everyone else, he gestured at the remaining guests. "I apologize for the disruption. If you'd like to stay and celebrate with us, you're welcome. If you'd rather leave, we understand completely." He set the microphone down on the nearest table. Either way, dinner is paid for. A few people actually laughed, genuine relieved laughter. The tension in the room shifted. Some guests headed for the exits. Others settled back into their seats. I counted later. 120 people stayed, 67 left, and my father was already walking toward the door. My father paused at the exit. I think he was waiting for someone to stop him, for my mother to call out, or Derek to stand up, or one of his business partners to clap him on the shoulder and tell him this was all a misunderstanding. No one moved. He turned back, scanning the room one last time. His eyes found mine. For a moment, just a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Not remorse exactly, more like confusion, like he genuinely couldn't understand how his carefully orchestrated performance had gone so wrong. Then his expression hardened. "You'll regret this," he said, not shouting, but loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "All of you." He threw the main door open and walked out into the September evening. The sound of his footsteps on the gravel driveway faded into silence. I watched his silhouette disappear around the corner of the building, and I waited for the guilt to hit. The second guessing, the voice in my head that had spent 29 years telling me to keep the peace. Don't make waves, don't embarrass the family. It didn't come. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. I could breathe. Marcus appeared at my side, his hand finding mine. Are you okay? I considered the question. My father had just been publicly humiliated. My mother was crying. My wedding reception had turned into a crime scene of sorts. Half the guests had fled. And I think so, I said slowly. For the first time in 29 years, I think I actually am. He squeezed my hand. Then, let's go cut our cake. And we did. The band started playing again at 8:15. It took a few minutes for the atmosphere to shift, but slowly, tentatively, people began to relax. Conversations resumed, glasses were refilled. Someone even made a joke about never having been to a wedding quite like this one. My college friends found me first. We always knew something was off with your dad, my roommate Sarah said, pulling me into a hug. The way you'd flinch whenever he called during finals week. You never said anything. You weren't ready to hear it. She squeezed me tighter. But we're here now. Aunt Helen approached next, her eyes red, but her smile genuine. Your grandparents would be so proud of you, she said, taking both my hands and hers. They always knew you were special. They just never got to see you prove it. Marcus's mother, Margaret, kissed me on both cheeks. Welcome to the family, sweetheart, officially. She glanced toward the door where my father had disappeared. And for what it's worth, I think you handled that with remarkable grace. We cut the cake, a 3-tiered vanilla creation that my father had insisted on, though I would have preferred chocolate. We had our first dance to a song Marcus and I had chosen together, one of the few decisions my father hadn't overruled. The photographer, to her credit, kept shooting. She told me later that some of her best work came from that night. Candid shots of genuine emotion instead of posed smiles. By 11:30, the last guests had said their goodbyes. The caterers were packing up. The fairy lights strung through the garden twinkled in the darkness. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and somehow impossibly happy. My wedding day had been a disaster. It had also been the first day of my real life. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying with me. The wedding was just the beginning. What happened in the weeks and months after? That's where things really started to change. But before I continue, I want to hear from you. What do you think my father deserved? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We still have a lot of story left to tell. Now, let's talk about the aftermath. 11:45 that night, Marcus and I were finally alone in our hotel suite. My phone sat on the nightstand, screen facing down. I turned off notifications hours ago, but I could still see the light blinking through the edges. How many? Marcus asked. I flipped it over. 14 missed calls from my father, 3 voicemails. Are you going to listen to them? I pressed play on the first one. My father's voice filled the room sharp with fury. You ungrateful little, how dare you humiliate me in front of I'll make you pay for this. Do you hear me? I deleted it without listening to the rest. Deleted all 3. There was a text from my mother. I'm staying at Helen's tonight. I need time to think. And one from Derek. Why didn't you tell me first? I stared at that message for a long time. 29 years of watching him get everything I was denied. And his first response was to ask why I hadn't warned him. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I had no idea. Just, why didn't you protect me from this? I didn't respond to either of them. Not that night. Marcus took the phone from my hands and set it back on the nightstand. "You don't have to answer anyone tonight." He said, "This is our wedding night. Everyone else can wait." For the first time in my life, I turned off my phone without feeling guilty about it. No one was going to make me feel bad for taking one night. Just one to be happy. The fallout could wait until morning. The first domino fell on Tuesday. Thomas Brennan called Foster Motors and requested a meeting with my father. According to Derek, who texted me the details despite my silence, the conversation lasted exactly 7 minutes. 15 years of partnership, $340,000 in annual revenue gone. He said he couldn't do business with someone he couldn't trust, Derek reported. Dad tried to explain, but Thomas wouldn't even let him finish. By Thursday, 2 more partners had paused their contracts pending internal review. That's corporate speak for "we're looking for an exit." The rumor spread faster than I expected. Sacramento's business community wasn't that large, and my father had spent decades building relationships on the foundation of his reputation as a family man, a self-made success, an honest dealer. That foundation was crumbling. I heard through Aunt Helen that people were talking at the country club, at the Rotary meetings, at the charity galas my father loved to attend. Richard Foster's daughter exposed him at her own wedding, stole her college fund, had an affair for 6 years. His wife left him that same night. That last part was true. My mother had moved into Aunt Helen's guest room on September 14th, and by the following weekend, she'd hired a lawyer. Derek called me on Friday. I didn't know about the money, he said. His voice was different, smaller somehow. "I swear, Elena, I didn't know he took your college fund." "But you knew he treated me differently." Silence. "Yeah," he finally admitted. "I knew that. It wasn't an apology. Not yet. But it was the first honest thing my brother had said to me in years." October 2024. My mother met with a divorce attorney, a colleague Marcus recommended from his firm. The consultation was supposed to be exploratory, just to understand her options. She came out of that meeting with a legal pad full of notes and a look I'd never seen on her face before. Determination. He had gambling debts, she told me over coffee that afternoon. In 2013, $89,000. I set down my cup. "That's the same year. The same year he took your college fund." "Yes." She pressed her lips together. "He used your inheritance to pay off his gambling losses. And he never told me." 32 years of marriage. 32 years of believing she knew the man sleeping next to her. She filed for legal separation on October 18th, 2024. My father called me 7 times that month. I answered once. "You've destroyed this family," he said. "Are you happy now?" I thought about the $47,000, the years of being told I wasn't good enough, the desperate comment at my wedding. "No, Dad," I said quietly. "You destroyed this family a long time ago. I just showed everyone the damage." He hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't feel guilty. I just sat there in the silence of my apartment, finally understanding something I should have realized years ago. I had spent my entire life trying to earn the approval of a man who was never going to give it. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because he needed me to feel small so he could feel big. That realization was worth more than any apology he could have offered. November 2024. Marcus helped me draft a formal demand letter. We kept it simple. $47,000 plus the interest I'd paid on the student loans that never should have existed. The total came to approximately $58,000. The letter was sent through his firm on official letterhead, accompanied by copies of the bank statement and a summary of the evidence. My father's response came through his lawyer 2 weeks later. Mr. Foster categorically denies any wrongdoing and considers this matter closed. Marcus wasn't surprised. "He's bluffing," he said. "His lawyer knows that if this goes to court, The bank records speak for themselves. He's hoping you'll give up. I didn't give up. We filed a formal complaint with the civil court. Not a lawsuit, not yet, but enough to signal that we were serious. 3 weeks later, my father's lawyer called with a counteroffer. My client is willing to settle for $52,000 payable over 24 months in exchange for a confidentiality agreement. Marcus looked at me. Your call. I thought about it. $52,000 wasn't the full amount, but it was close. And 24 months meant I'd have the money before I turned 32. No confidentiality agreement, I said. Everything else fine. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I'll relay that to my client. The final agreement was signed on December 3rd, 2024. $52,000, 24 monthly payments, no gag order. The first check arrived on December 15th. I used it to pay off the remaining balance on my student loans, 11 years ahead of schedule. For the first time since I was 18 years old, I owed nothing to anyone. January 2025. I spent a long time thinking about what I wanted my relationship with my father to look like going forward. Complete estrangement felt too extreme. Despite everything, he was still my father. I'd spent 29 years hoping he would change. And some small part of me, the part that remembered him teaching me to ride a bike, the part that remembered birthday parties before I was old enough to disappoint him, wasn't ready to close that door entirely. But I also couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't sit through another Thanksgiving dinner pretending his comments didn't hurt. I couldn't keep performing the role of the grateful daughter while he treated me like a burden. So, I wrote an email. Dad, I'm willing to maintain limited contact under the following conditions. No comments about my career, my marriage, or my life choices. No references to the wedding or what happened there. Any meetings must include Marcus or Mom as a witness. If you violate any of these terms, I will end contact completely. This is not a negotiation. Elena, I sent it on a Tuesday morning and didn't expect a response. 2 weeks later, a reply appeared in my inbox. One word, fine. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he'd done. Just fine. It was enough. I didn't expect him to change. I didn't expect him to suddenly become the father I'd always wanted. But I'd finally stopped waiting for that transformation. I'd spent 29 years trying to earn his approval. Now I was giving myself permission to stop. That email wasn't about fixing our relationship. It was about protecting myself. And for the first time in my life, I'd chosen myself. March 2025. My mother's divorce was finalized on the 15th. California is a community property state, which meant she walked away with half of everything, approximately $2.1 million in assets, including the house she'd spent 32 years making into a home. She sold it within a month. Too many memories, she said when I asked why. I need a fresh start. She bought a small apartment in San Francisco, 15 minutes from our place. We started having lunch together every Sunday, just the two of us. No agenda, no family drama, just a mother and daughter learning how to know each other without a controlling presence in the room. Derek was harder. He'd started therapy in November after the wedding. His therapist had helped him see patterns he'd been blind to his whole life. The favoritism, the way our father had pitted us against each other, the unearned privileges he'd accepted without question. I benefited from a system that hurt you, he told me over coffee in February. I'm not sure I can ever make that right, but I want to try. We weren't close, not yet. Maybe not ever, but we were talking, which was more than we'd done in years. Thanksgiving 2025 was at my apartment. I cooked. Marcus handled the drinks. My mother brought her famous apple pie. Aunt Helen drove up from Sacramento. Derek came with his wife, both of them awkward but present. My father wasn't invited. We sat around my small dining table. 6 people instead of 20. No business partners, no golf buddies, No one trying to impress anyone else. It was the best Thanksgiving I've ever had. Today is December 2025. I'm 30 years old, still a financial analyst, though the title on my door now reads Associate Director, a promotion I earned 3 months ago. My portfolio has grown to 18 million. My annual reviews still say exceeds expectations. Marcus and I are talking about starting a family. We're not in a rush, but we've started having the conversations about timing, about values, about the kind of parents we want to be. I know one thing for certain. I will never speak to my children the way my father spoke to me. I don't hate him. That surprised me at first. I thought I would carry the anger forever, let it calcify into something hard and permanent. But hatred takes energy, and I've decided to spend mine on better things. What I feel now is something closer to clarity. My father is a man who needed to demand as others to feel important. He stole from me, lied to my mother, and spent decades building a version of himself that couldn't survive contact with the truth. That's his burden to carry, not mine. I look back at my wedding sometimes, not with regret, but with something like gratitude. That day was supposed to be my father's final performance, his last chance to remind everyone that I was the lesser child, the disappointment, the one who got lucky. Instead, it became the day I took back my voice. You can't control how people treat you, but you can decide what you're willing to accept. It took me 29 years to learn that lesson. I hope it doesn't take you as long. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been made to feel small by someone who was supposed to lift you up, I want you to know something. You deserve better. You have the right to set boundaries and you are not alone. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like, subscribe, and comment below for us today. It really helps. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, check out the video I've linked in the description. I think you'll find something there that sticks with you. I'm Elena. Thank you for listening. See you in the next